everyone. Welcome to our weekly Q&A. I'm Amy, and this is Johnny.
Stitches. Oh, they're like same two people every week. There are like 7 or 8 people on that team.
There's not that many.
It's close. All right, so we have like 4 questions this week from our Patreon group, so that's really cool. So let's get one kicked off.
All right, so our first question from Patreon comes from William Armentrout. What's your favorite line so far?
That's cool.
Mine is from season 1. And then quotations. Can you see that puddle?
So what episode is that from?
I don't know.
That is season 1, episode 6, The Liquid. And that's when we're not in spoiler territory, so that's later on in the video, but that's when a certain guy, I know it's season 1, we should be able to spoil that with no problem, but you never know. It's not a main character or anything, but that's when the guy beats the other guy with his beer tankard.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about a special liquid, and the guy's like, that's BS. And then he beats him to death. And he's like, you believe in that, puddle? That is a really, really good line. Yeah, it was a very well acted part by Anthony Rideout on that one.
Yeah, that was a good one.
What is my favorite line so far? Oh, I don't know. I can't say it because it's season 4. So, but I guess he says so far.
Yeah, that was not out yet.
I love that one. You're gonna shoot me, blank. That's my favorite line. No one knows what that means.
It's probably because we've been listening to it over and over and over while we're...
Now we go from formalities to rats. I think that one's a pretty good line. That's Theobald talking about Cell to Black Death or whatever. That's a little bit of spoiler, not much, but out of context. If you've listened to the show, you know which one we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Mine might have to be so many questions.
I thought about putting that before each one of these Q&As. That's Ambrielle, voiced by Jessica McAvoy. On is it Through the Veil episode?
Yes.
So many. Harper's like, what's going on here? What's this? What's that? So many questions.
Yeah.
That was a good question, Will. Thanks for your support.
Another question from our Patreon from Kenneth Bryant. How long does each episode take to produce in total, from concept to finished broadcast?
I think we've kind of touched on this one in one of the other Q&A videos and on countless ICE episodes, but Kenneth's donating. He puts his money where his mouth is.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna reiterate, and plus it might be somebody's first time watching one of these videos. I would say, from concept, like us just sketching out, in this episode we're gonna have a murderous clown pull a kid into a sewer, all the way to producing it. That doesn't happen on our show, but
That's already been done.
I don't want to spoil any of our episodes because there's not a spoiler part, but like from sitting down talking about, wouldn't it be cool if this character did this with this character, all the way to pressing play on the mastered product and that character going, we should go here. Okay. Like that scene going from concept to play, and just working on just that episode from writing all the way to production, I'd probably say it's about, depending on the amount in the episode, like as far as length and sound effects and all that, I'd have to give it a range of about 50 to 80 hours.
I think that's a good range.
Yeah. I mean, I know it sounds like, what? 80 hours? That's over 3 days total just for one episode. But if you condense every writer's room, me calling or Skyping or talking to the person in this box, walking them through the lines, rewrites, everything, then making sure that sound effect goes right, that we get the right plug-in on that person, all the production work that goes into that actual line, making sure it syncs with the music that's going on at the same time as that. Yeah, I'd say each episode takes about 80 hours.
We never look at it like from episode to episode.
Yeah, because they're like fingerprints. Like every one of them are different.
Yeah.
But that's a good range because I mean we've told people before like mini episodes that the best way to kind of look at it is that it takes an hour per minute, but that's on production.
That's on just production.
So if it's an 8-minute episode, it usually takes about 8 hours to produce it. If it's a 60-minute episode, it takes about 60 hours to produce it. Like just the audio, like that means that all the lines are recorded, all the music's in-house, everything's done except for actually getting into Pro Tools and putting it together.
And that's what I was kind of getting at, that it's a moving piece. Like we're working on one episode right now, and then Christina's working on one, and then we'll have someone else working on artwork, and so it's a bunch of different moving pieces at one time, so we may all be on a different episode at the same time.
Yep.
Another one from our Patreon, Robert Rogers. What inspires you to come up with the names of the characters outside of the original band names?
That's a good question. I think I said that like when I typed it when I first saw them posted. I was like, "Oh, that's awesome! I love these things like because of stuff like this." It's just so like characters like I guess he's talking like Lena and Harper and these characters that aren't obviously band name sounding characters. I don't know. It's kind of like similar to naming a child. It really is. Like I go through, I look at like how old a character is, and then I'll go to like naming charts and see like what was a popular name around that time. Sometimes we'll use Harper for a good example. Like we wanted a detective sounding character, like Harper Powers, PI.
Yeah.
And back in the day, I'm Detective Harper Powers. When he was still with the Force or whatever, which we never really get to see that iteration of him, just the washed up PI. But I took like a lot of inspiration, like mixing like a Dick Tracy with like a Jessica Jones. Is what I was going for with Harper. I mean, no superpowers, but like just what do you want now? Just he's always aggravated. He's got, radio drama kind ofness. And that one took a little bit. Remember, we wanted originally, Harper was going to have a name that was either way. Harper could be a female.
Oh, yeah.
Or it could be a male.
Because we weren't sure who we were going to cast.
Because we weren't sure who we were going to cast for Harper when we originally wrote him. We named Emmett, which we won't drop who Emmett is, how he evolves. But when we named this character Emmett, I had to go back to like the early 1900s and see what names and stuff were like then for him. And I also want to make sure, because there's a lot of J names like Jeremiah and Jezaziah and all these are Josiah. That's it. I think I just made Jezaziah up. That's a pretty cool sounding name.
Well, that's what we do.
Next character. But if he was going to be interacting a lot with like Johnny or Joey, I didn't want another J name.
Yeah.
So that's that goes into a lot of it too. All right, and our last patron question comes from Billy Stewart of the ScaryDad podcast. That's cool because that's going to transition into a lot of our main segment, I think, for this Q&A. But when making a podcast, should you start off using a service like Spreaker or go ahead and make your own website? Even with SoundCloud, and I'm pretty sure it's the same way with Spreaker. Someone out there might know better than me on this video. You can post it. But both of those have like, here's your free limit. And then once you go over that, they're like, oh, you need to upgrade, or you're going to have to pull an old episode off to upload a new one. And like if you go to Sirenicide's SoundCloud, I really think like season 1's on there and that's it. Just because they're like, oh, you're going to have to pull all of this off. I'm like, yeah, hopefully this will be a tease enough for people to find us elsewhere. I've never had anybody email me and go, where's the rest of your SoundCloud season? We use Libsyn, and I think that's going to be a question later, or it might be. If it's not, we'll dive in deeper into that then. And they have like a $5 level for just like uploading, I think, 40 megs or something like that. We use the classic 400, which I think is $20. And with that, you can upload up to 400 megs for a podcast. And depending on how you export it, if you export it, like compressing it. And I don't mean compressing it like losing all the quality, but just make it smaller. Like I think each of our episodes range between 60 and 80 megs. When they're in their lossless form, they're all over half a gig, almost a gig sometimes. So you can't really upload that. I mean, you could if you're a millionaire, but I pressed play on this episode, and it's literally taking 5 minutes to just queue up the first 2 seconds. Screw this. Yeah. They'll skip it because it takes a long time for something like that to load. So I would recommend going ahead and creating your own website. You can go to a place like GoDaddy or Google Sites. GoDaddy, a lot of times, they'll give you one landing page. And then from there, you can plug in like your Libsyn feed and just put a cool banner up at the top. And you have a .com at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend that over Service. Because, I mean, what if Spreaker goes down? Like, and you have all your eggs in one basket. If I'm with Libsyn as my server and they close up shop, I still have, Sirenicide.com through Squarespace and vice versa. If Squarespace for some reason just went off the planet and I had to find a new web provider, then I still have my Libsyn feed. And you can actually go to like your Libsyn library. It's this massive URL, but I mean, and you can give that to somebody. It'll take them directly to all of your feed on them too. We're not sponsored by Libsyn nor Squarespace. I know Squarespace like sponsors everybody on the planet, but we're just not up there yet.
No.
But before we launched the podcast, Sirenicide's band website was just through the free Google Sites. And I went to GoDaddy and I masked the Google/site/Sirenicide. So when you're sitting on our site, it still said Sirenicide.com, even though it's like a free Google page. That does it for Patreon questions. If you want to get your question moved to the front of the Q&A video, just join our Patreon for $1 or more. Get you access to priority questions and access to our secret Facebook group and a whole lot of other cool happenings. You can go to patreon.com/Sirenicide for more details on that. Amy Jordan. How niche is too much? Like, how do you appeal to a broader audience and still maintain your specific topic? This is a really good question. I really like this one. It's like we're considered horror drama, which is, I guess, our niche, but we try to add like a lot of in-depth character development to our characters. We try to put them in situations that aren't just necessarily supernatural or gore related. That way, a lot of times we can give that said episode of that situation to somebody and they're like, wow, I really like this. And they'll realize it's not that bad. Like, I guess for an example, like, bring them up a lot, like Walking Dead is a horror TV show.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain episodes you could hand to somebody, like, check this one out. Like, The Grove is one of my favorite. Look at the flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's a really good episode to hand to somebody. That it's it's still in a horror universe, but it's such a impactful, narrative-driven, well-written, well-directed, well-filmed episode. But as far as that, we just try to make sure that we don't just grind on horror and horror and horror, because then no one would want to listen to it except for just only the horror fanatics.
Well, sometimes real-life situations can be just as scary.
And Amy had a lot of questions. So we answered, we're doing 2 of them this week, but we'll probably do a few more from her next week. It's a good name.
I know, right? Fellow Amy's. What do you do if/when you offend your audience?
It hasn't happened a whole lot. I mean, other than like, I consider offending your audience as like when you set something out there without like a trigger warning, or when you cross one of these new social justice lines in the sand kind of thing. Or when you just do something that's so disturbing that even if there would have been a trigger warning, someone's still going to gripe about it. We've done very few trigger warnings in our show. I'm a big believer in, if you're pressing play on a horror genre, you should expect horrible situations, things to go horribly.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes them horror. So we don't do a whole lot of them. One I kind of regret, but I don't want to go back and do it now. And this might be a minor spoiler, so I'm going to throw up the spoiler flag and say jump ahead like 40 seconds to a minute-ish. Oh, that's what I'll do. I'll throw a thumbnail right here that says the timestamp where you can come back if you don't want spoilers to our show. There is an episode, season 3, 14, where some kids get killed because it's our children that, like, they were in here just giggling, and it's so hard to, like, disconnect from that part of it, like them cutting up, that when you put it all together and none of that's there and you're just hearing the end product, that's sometimes how awful it can be. That being said, this is an answer to a big question in the show, which is what happened to someone's family. And we wanted to give that to the listener, not just keep alluding to it. And it is horrible. Not only is it horrible, you have to listen to it twice, because it turns out the first time is misconstrued in kind of a lie of the villain that did this. So I guess if I could go back and put like a harm to children trigger warning on it, I'd say yeah, but I don't remember it popping up and saying, there's gonna be a boy getting his arm ripped off. You know, I mean, it's a horror movie. This is a horror podcast. So I didn't do that, but I did have I did offend a few people with that episode. One fan in particular said that he couldn't finish the episode and like stop listening to the show. So, oops.
Yeah.
But yeah. Hope that answered that question, Amy. I'm sorry. I keep saying that a lot this episode.
Jessica Rainey asked, what equipment is essential to podcasting? What are your favorites and why?
Depends on what kind of podcast you're doing. As far as what equipment you need. The other video I said, I think just get your idea out there and go for it. I still stand by that. But as you evolve your show, some things that you should go after. The essentials, a USB microphone. Don't go off and get yourself an interface and a mixer and bury yourself in a bunch of debt, and then you like produce your first 3 or 4 podcasts, find out it's not something you even want to do, and now you got all this equipment that you got to unload for like a third of the price or half the price.
Yeah.
Just get you a USB mic. And don't, if you get like the Yeti one at like Best Buy or Target or off Amazon or Guitar Center, any of those places, they funnel those departments. Best Buy is the worst at this. Like you'll walk in to get the USB Yeti mic, and then over to the side it'll have this like $200 arm mount that you need to slide the mic down so you can talk in it. And then Yeti also makes this. Don't just get the USB mic and then go. Audacity is completely free editing software. I know most podcasts I talked to, they got their start just using Audacity. Some of the big ones still just use Audacity because it's free editing software. If you have a Mac, GarageBand is on every Mac standard, free editing software. Those are the essentials. What are my podcasting favorites? Well, I am a big fan of the Electro Voice microphones, which I'm touching right now, and the SM7B from Shure. Those are phantom-powered mics, so they do require an external power source like an interface that can send out phantom power. They are not USB connected. They have a lot better quality. I think that especially if you're going to be doing a broadcast one, like if you're, hey everybody, last night at the football game, like it really just brings the voice out. So if you're doing like a commentary podcast, I would definitely get something like that. My favorite editing software is Pro Tools. It's a love-hate relationship.
Yes, it is.
I recently started using Logic like in the last week to start working on music, and I really like a lot of features and it's really cool, but there's a lot of things that I can probably do in there. It's just a learning curve, but I'm still like, I think Pro Tools has got this laid out a little less, even though Pro Tools looks like Windows 98 still, their menus are just so much easier to navigate, I think. But that's probably because I've been using it since 2004.
I've only used Pro Tools. So,
but yeah, any laptop, any computer, you don't want to go out and go buy a fancy Mac. You don't want to go buy some big old gaming computer or anything like that. Pretty much any computer will run Audacity, and if you have a USB microphone, it'll pick it up. And for more on that, we're going to be at the ScaryDad Haunted Halloween show. I got this up on the screen right now, looking like Subway, $5 footlongs. Information there and in the comments below, and we're going to be on a panel about podcasting. So we'll be answering all these questions live, me and a few other panelists, other podcasts here locally in the Houston, Moreston market. So come check us out. It's the Matt Hughes Minute. It's the Matt Hughes Minute. Matt Hughes, it's your minute. All right.
Okay. What kind of hurdles should we watch out for if starting our own podcast?
You like how I took Matt Hughes' question and,
Yes,
and put it into the theme of the episode?
You did a good job.
Thank you. You did a good job, Matt Hughes.
Thanks, Matt.
So if you go to Sirenicide.com, not to segue from your question, there was a new Q&A tab, and you click it, and it goes down. It's got like, we have a spoiler segment. You can ask questions on Patreon and get them moved ahead. And then there's that photo of Matt with his leather jacket. It says, we have the Matt Hughes Minute. And people are like, what the fuck is that? But it's our segment, and we love it. Kind of hurdles to watch out for. Don't tell everybody you're going to make a podcast. Just make one and surprise everybody with it. You're going to set yourself up for failure, like if you don't get it out on time. As a member of our team likes to say, you'll create yourself a whole bunch of stressful, invisible deadlines that aren't really there. But they are there because you've guaranteed this audience, no matter if there are 5 people or 5,000 people, that you have this thing coming. Said it before, another one, but again, reiterate, definitely have about 3 to 4, if not 5 episodes in the can ready to go when you launch. That way, and if you're first time ever launching a podcast, do it bi-weekly. Do it bi-weekly. Do not come out of the gate with a week-to-week podcast unless you have 10 or 20 in the can, because you're going to burn through them real quick. Then you're going to have a drought anyway. And if you're like, man, I really like this week-to-week show, and it just stopped. If you do bi-weekly and you tell people, well, we're going to start off bi-weekly, and the more feedback we get and the more support we get, we'll move it to a weekly podcast. We've been doing that for 3 years.
Yes.
We've still not. The Sirenicide Season 4 is our first week-to-week. And that's just for story purposes only. Because we still didn't technically hit our goal for week to week. We're way away from that.
Every other week also allows you time for family and other things, and not have to do crunch time for every single week to get something out. If you don't, like, once you run through those ones that you already have, like, just waiting.
So, time management. That's the biggest hurdle. Time management and over-promising to like your potential fan base, especially if you already have a semi-following online. Like say you do something else, like you're a musician or a painter or an author, and then you transition into a podcast and you have like hundreds upon thousands of people waiting for that content to come, and then it doesn't. That starts to tarnish your other works too. So spoilers. We have our spoilers segment now, continuing from the Matt Hughes Minute into spoilers. Our first spoiler question.
And Matt asks, what are some of your favorite scenes from the overarching story?
Well, we're not talking standalones.
I think mine's going to be the whole, and it's basically through all of the seasons, but it's the evolving of Matthew Finnis. Because we start off with him, and he goes through like a massive transition from everything that he has learned to almost becoming something completely different that he said he wasn't. So I really like the transition on how people can change and learning more things and how that evolves your opinion on it.
So what scene?
It's a scene.
What's a scene that kind of stands out of that for you? I'm going in the ice format.
Yeah, you are. Man, put me on the spot and stuff.
All right. While you're thinking, mine is the scene of Lena Klein whenever she opens the door for Eddie, and you hear like the Morning Dove sound off. It's the opening of season 2. That is my favorite scene from the overarching story, of her pulling the door. So this is it, and it's like, that's Lena, you know. And you have no idea what's about to unfold. So it's not even that whole scene like where he kills her. It's that moment where she just cracks open the door and he's like, can I come in? And all you can think of is, we've heard the first season of his podcast. Here comes the sweat from the hot box. You've heard the first season of his podcast, and this poor old lady was just hurt by this man, and now he's like showing up. But he did say something like, she's the closest thing to love I've ever known. And literally in the next few minutes, you find out what all that means. But in that moment right there before, it was just like this, okay, we've heard the mini episode where he says he's got to kill Lena. But why is she not like, oh my God, you're back? Why is she not freaking out? What the fuck is going on? That's my favorite moment from the overarching story so far.
Okay, so going back to mine, it's probably going to be, I believe it's Finally, where we get the recording Matthew Finnis standard, like where he's talking to himself and what he's kind of
when he presses the recorder,
yes.
But he's not Matthew Finnis.
Yes.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. So you realize you think he's just talking to himself about, I've been through all this. And you're like, oh my God, this is Finnis. And then he hits the recorder when the guy knocks on the door or whatever. Yeah, that's a really good scene. So Brandon Greer asked this one a little while back. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to move it into a spoiler segment, even though I think I answered it online. So, is the Dr. Sammy who fixed 447's daughter another name for Doc, or just another USG agent? That's one. And was Vinny Syringe special because he had the ability to pass on the luminescence? Is that something only Johnny and Eddie can do? Or has Johnny taught others? This is a really good one to unpack for the lore.
Yes.
So Dr. Sammy is not Doc. He is. We've never really explored him again. He was mentioned in that episode, and I don't know if he's mentioned again later. He might be. But evidently he was a psycho member of the USG that didn't mind cutting up kids and is no longer a part of them. I would assume, by the way Johnny's talked since. So I would think, because he came back to the church in that same episode and Sammy's not there, but Johnny offered a way out. So I'm assuming they took care of this weirdo that's cutting up kids and making them acolytes. And that really messed with people because literally in the next episode, we have the acolyte version of Vincent's kid.
Mm-hmm.
My son. And, he describes him as a child acolyte. So there might be something there. Who knows? Anyway, we know. So he was just another USG agent at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And Vinny Syringe, he did have the ability to bring things back from the dead. So he uses the luminescent power. So the luminescence is the light force that keeps these scarred beings alive, be them scarred by the USG or be them scarred by Johnny. The thing is, if Johnny infuses you with the luminescence, he's doing something to these people, we think. We're not exactly sure yet as far as storyline goes. But he's not the only person that can produce the scarring. And the luminescence is an ingredient in the scarring. It's the power. Now, what you're talking about is the anomaly gift of, I think what you're talking about is the anomaly gift to bring back the dead. Because Eddie can do it, Johnny can do it, and we heard Vinny Syringe do that.
Mm-hmm.
He's got luminescent scars on his dogs, which doesn't mean they were dead. But we heard him bring a girl back and then kill her, and failed and tried. So I think Vinny Syringe is probably an apprentice of Johnny's that when he went wayward, that he still tried to keep. He didn't have all the tools to finish the job, and then when he finally did put it all together for himself, he was too gone by that moment to make anything of it. So hopefully that answered your question, Brandon. If it didn't, please feel free to reiterate or ask more details, and we'll answer them on another spoiler segment. That does it for today's Q&A. Thank you guys so much. Please, again, check us out at the Scary Dad Haunted Halloween Show, September 28th and 29th. All the links in the description will be below. And throw some questions down here on this YouTube video if you want them in next week or another Q&A, as well as our Sirenicide Scarred Ones group or on our Patreon. But until next time, don't get scarred. Bye.
Bye, guys.
All elements of Sirenicide are copyright 2019 by Atrium Dynamics.